Okay guys, so before we get started, I just want to say this video is just focused on blending a subject's feet into a scene. So why feet blending? Well, feet blending can be complicated. So we have a few things to think about, like the lighting, the shadows, the reflective light and colors. So I'm going to break down the process to make it as easy as possible without getting too technical. I'm going to go with a diffused scene to avoid harsh lights. I will cover harsh lighting in a separate video. So with this tutorial today, I didn't pre-plan or test this edit. I actually did it on the fly just to demonstrate different variables that we encounter with photo manipulation art. So just to quickly go over the base principles that I have for blending feet into a scene. So I've stuck to the principle of having 3 shadow layers underneath the subject. So they're called the base shadows, which are the base shadows under the subject. Additional shadows, which are shadows from additional objects in the scene. And edge shadows, which is the harsh edge shadows around the utmost edge of where the shoe meets the ground. So that's 3 shadow layers underneath the subject. And then for the subject themselves, I will cover values adjustment, saturation adjustment, color adjustment, edge fixing, highlight details, shadow details, and reflective colors. Yeah, let's just jump straight in. I'm going to just find, I hadn't really planned this because I feel like sometimes when I plan out a video or tutorial, it takes a lot of effort and time, and you kind of just giving people like very specific steps for very specific circumstances. And while that is good because you can learn from that, obviously, it takes a little bit longer to do, and not everything's that simple. When you refine a tutorial, it's very specific, and not everything's that simple. So I wanted to kind of do a video where I hadn't really planned the subject and see if I can do it reasonably quickly and not have it too long or overwhelming. So I'm just going to find a subject that is slightly diffused. I'd prefer one where it's not bad quality and the shoes are kind of quite clear, even though this scene's not amazing. But I don't want the shoes to require a lot of work. I just want it to be pretty brief. This one might work. I'll just go with this. So I'll quickly just cut with the lasso tool. Gonna turn off snapping. I think that's, I actually feel like that's sitting pretty well there. Yeah, this one's going to work pretty well, I think. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this subject out. Just going to get a hard brush. I'm going to slightly turn down the hardness, make sure my flow is at 100. And I'm just going to, I'm not going to worry too much. This tutorial, I'm not going to worry about the hair too much. This tutorial is just on the feet, so the cutout doesn't have to be amazing because the focus is just on the feet. I'm just doing a quick cutout here with the hard brush. I'm just holding shift as I click along here. This image is a little bit grainy, but it should be okay. All right, the cutout's pretty good. I'm just going to adjust the image so it sits a little bit more accurately in the scene. Just gonna fix up some of these edges. Just the really annoying ones. No, that looks fine. Okay, double click on the layer mask just to enter refinement, and I'm just going to give a slight feather, a little bit of contrast, and bring back those edges just slightly. A little bit more. Yeah, and now I'm going to, because this is actually more noisy than the actual base image, I'm just going to apply some very slight noise reduction. Yeah, that's probably fine. Not going to worry too much, just so it sits in the scene a little better. Okay, so the cutout's fine. I'm just going to put that in a folder. I call that subject. I'm going to put the background. I call that background, and then I'm going to delete this layer. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to get the subject more blended into the scene. I'm just going to apply curves. Just going to bring down subject slightly. So I jump into values mode. I won't talk about how I set this up. I've talked about that on Twitter a few times. The shortcut is Control Y. So I'm checking the values because it helps me to blend a little bit better without having the colors affecting how I perceive the values, like for the blending. So this is with compositing. It's always challenging because you got to refer to the scene that you've set up here. And because the scene is only one image, well, we just have to kind of look at the shadows, midtones, and highlights of this background and get the subject as close as we can as early on as possible. Obviously, there's more refinements later, but already I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. Actually, because the background, this background image has kind of like a fade, like a matte kind of look, I'm gonna just give it a little bit more of that faded look here by bringing up the shadows just slightly, and then bringing down the highlights to a level that I am content with. And then I'm going to lock in a point here on the shadows and just slightly add a little bit more. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So at this point here, I'm just making some more adjustments to the curves. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that for now. I'm gonna actually put another point here. Just feel like there's not enough depth. Just gonna, yeah, bring those highlights back a little. And just bring these, yeah, get a little bit more definition back in those shoes. Still quite grainy. I'm gonna actually increase the noise reduction even more, which is unusual, but I'm going to. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. It's probably the best I'm going to get at this point for the subject. I'm going to add a hue saturation adjustment under the curves just to desaturate this subject a little. Yep, and then I'm going to add in a color balance on top just to recolor slightly. Yeah, slightly more blue. So usually what I would do is I'd bring the person in, I would do some adjustments like I've just done. I would apply curves, and then if I need to you can actually see, and then if I need to start applying some color balance, hue saturation adjustments, and just focusing on blending certain areas at different times. Obviously, the feet are going to look a little different to the top of the body here. Obviously, we're probably going to need to add some more lighting on this subject at the top, but I'm not going to worry about this at the moment. I'm just focused on the feet. So because of the quality of this image, applying the curves has some of the information has caused, you can only see it slightly, just some color issues. I'm not going to worry too much. I'll just desaturate slightly and then I'll come back to that after. Okay, so once the subject is pretty much like blended quite well, like you can see these highlights on the feet kind of match the highlights on the road here, even though they're different colors. That's kind of what we have to aim for, to get as close as we can, because where the feet are meeting the ground, that's the focus point. We won't worry about the rest of the lighting for now. Okay, so the first thing is I will just actually make some adjustments to the shoes and just get the edges all nice, and then we'll focus on the shadows. So I'm gonna add a new layer and clip it to the subject. I'm just gonna get my brush. I'm gonna get just a default soft brush. I'm gonna change the flow to around 20. Now, just at the edge here, I'm going to just fix up some of these edges of the shoe just by painting in just around here. Just to fix up those edges. Just to get the shoe nice and cleaned up just at certain points, because we're putting it into a new scene. Just fixing up some of that black. Yeah, that's better. So I'm going to set that to around 75% opacity on those painted layers, just to leave a little bit of the shadow dark under the shoe, just slightly. Okay, so then below the subject, I'm going to create a new layer, get my brush. I'm just going to look at the background and look at like the darkest areas in the background. Like here, like the shadow. Just going to color sample there. And I'm just going to start painting some shadow under here, just with the soft brush. So the benefit of this scene being diffused is we don't have to worry too much about harsh shadows, just about the shadows. Sorry, we don't have to worry too much about harsh sunlight shadows. We're just worrying about like shadows cast under a diffused light. So it's not as challenging. It's like softer. So I'm just getting the erase tool. I'm just going to brush some of that. Just erase a little bit of that. So we're going to layer the shadows up one by one, depending on what we think we need. So it's kind of darkest around where the shoe is meeting the road, just like that. And yeah, don't want to go too far. It's not like a rush. We're just like practicing getting the shadows right. So we're gonna just like, to make sure we match the scene. That's why I sampled like one of the shadows or the dark areas on the road here, like here or here. Just so we get a sample of that shadow and we apply that underneath the shoes. So, because we're just trying to get as close as we can to the scene so it looks seamless. And I'm going to do the other side as well. So I'm just painting in like a little bit more harshly around where the shoe is actually meeting the road, and then kind of just tapering it out like around the edges. Because we can't know, like, you can't know for sure, like you can never predict exactly how it would have looked if you've got no reference in the scene. And this scene we don't really have a lot of reference other than like these, you know, these things, grass, rocks, and you know, there's not really much shadow being cast here. It's very, very soft, so we don't want to be going too harsh on the shadows. We're just going to be layering it up just bit by bit. So already the subject's sitting quite well in the scene. I like the way those shadows look. I'm just going to add a little tiny bit more here and here. Alright, so once I'm happy with the first pass of the shadows, I'm going to add a new, I'm just going to rename that shadow, whoops, shadow 1. Going to add another layer for the next layer of shadows. So once I'm happy with one of the layers of shadows, I'll add another layer. So I'm going to name this shadow 2. And I'm just going to paint shadow underneath the subject here. So like where the subject's kind of standing, to give some, you know, like the shade coming down from the torso down here. And just a slight amount out here, back here, just a little. Obviously, like I said, it's quite diffused, so we don't have to be like too strict. Just slight, just like that. And that even might be too much. I mean, this is where you just use your discretion. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that at about 65. The shadows on the feet here are actually looking pretty good, and I'm quite happy with them. I'm gonna add one more pass of shadow underneath them, and then I'm gonna move on to just adjusting the feet. And that's pretty much going to be the gist of the video. So shadow 3. Okay, so this one I'm going to make a little bit darker, just slightly. So I'm going to select like this dark area here. Yeah, and I'm going to just add some really dark spots just where the feet, like around the edge here. Just like that. And that's actually probably too much. Like I might be overthinking it because I'm pretty like happy with how it even looks now. Very slight, very subtle. I'm just erasing some of that. I feel like you can like easily overdo it. Yeah, super subtle, just like that. So that's basically the shadows layered up for now. 1, 2, and 3. So it's basically made up of like a base shadow, and then we start thinking about additional shadows cast from other areas, like the torso, and then basically the uttermost edges, like just around the edges, giving it that little bit of extra darkness. And for that, I think that's enough. Like if you just focus like down on this area, like I feel like it's looking pretty good already. Right, okay, so moving on to colors and lighting on the shoes. Because this is a diffused scene, they're already looking pretty good. It's difficult to kind of say what else we could add. I'm going to add some slight highlights to them and some slight shadows. I don't think they're going to need much more. So there's going to be some slight highlights, slight shadows, and some slight color reflection from the road. And apart from that, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to clip it here. So I'm going to rename this one I did before and just call it Edge Fix, and then I'm going to call this one Highlight. And I'm just going to get my brush. I'm actually just going to select the sky, and just with a soft brush, just slightly paint in some highlights on the edge of the shoe, like very slight. We can fix this, but we just know that the sky is kind of bright, so because yeah, it's like some of the shoelaces are like we're lost in the detail. This is where your creativity can come in, depending on your how you do your art. Your art style. Couldn't think of the word, art style. So I'm just getting my erase tool, just taking them back slightly. So we've just added a little bit, like it's so subtle, but we've just added, it's not too subtle, just added some details of light onto the shoe. And I'm just going to do this other shoe. Just where I think like the light from the sky might be hitting the shoe. And I'll move on to the shadows next. Yeah, just like that. I wouldn't go much further than that right now, and you know, if I took the scene further I would worry more, but this is just to set an example in what processes I would usually think about. So edge fixes, some slight highlights, I'll add some slight shadows. So yeah, I've color selected a dark area here. And I'm just going to paint in just some more detail onto the shoe here because of the information we've kind of lost here, just to give some more depth and detail. So where the shoe is meeting the road here, there's obviously, we got to think about the shadow and reflection that we've created, and there's going to be some reflection from that light that's bouncing onto the shoe, and so it's actually going to be slightly dark because of the shadow here. So I just kind of slightly paint in some shadow here. I'm going to just take it back a little. But yeah, it just helps with the extra detail, and I'm going to do the same here. So just get my brush, just thinking about shadows underneath the laces here. I can't really see this detail, but I just will use my mind to think about what it is. Just some shadow on the laces. Oops, just painting in some shadow here. Bit of shadow here, slight shadow on the inside. Some shadow here. And just shadows around here. Because, you know, you're creating a scene, your original assets aren't always going to be accurate, and part of the creativity is adding in your own details. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I don't want them to look dirty, obviously. I just want them to look like they're sitting correctly. And yeah, I've added in some more detail there. After we've done the color matching, so like adjust the values, like the light, get the light looking like a good base with, I'll do this now, with the, like let's go back over what we did. So getting the curves adjustment with the lighting, getting that like a good base, and that's a pretty good base we have there. I like slight hue saturation adjustment, slight color balance adjustment, then some edge fixing just on the actual subject with the brush, then highlights, and then some additional shadows just to add more depth and dimension. Some images won't always need this, or you know, your art style might mean that's what you do, but that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about the scene's highlights and the scene's shadows and applying that to your subject. And the last thing I would generally do is I'm thinking about, it doesn't really need this, but I'm just going to do it just to show you. The colors on the ground and the light bouncing in the scene, like that is like reflecting. Obviously it's not like a mirror, you can't see like a reflection, but there is reflective light that would be hitting the shoes. So we need to think about that because the road is slightly grey blue and the shoes are quite white. We just want to apply a slight bounce here. So I'm just going to call this adjustment, and I'm going to just color select the road here with my brush and just paint in like very, very subtle color on the edge. So you'll see that very slight. If I turn that, you're very, very slight. I'm even going to check and change to, yeah. So if I do change the adjustment, this adjustment to a color blend mode, you can see I'm just adding just the color change. So we just paint in that slight color adjustment from that reflection. Same over here. And already it's just, I don't know, if you can see the difference, it's like, makes a big difference to your compositing, really. I've definitely added too much there. Let's take that back a little. Just like that. And that I would actually be super happy with. And then I would move on to doing the rest of the subject, like relighting up here. The face is quite dark, you know, you would start to do things like that depending on your scene. But that's essentially the basis of like blending feet into a scene. So I'll quickly just do a recap. So if I turn off all the layers, so you've got your base, you've got your scene set up, and in this case it's just one image. And then we put our subject in, we cut the subject out if we need to, do our curves adjustment, slight hue saturation, so always values and color balance, just to get, it's like to adjust the colors in the image so it's more blended with the scene. I did a slight edge fix if you need to, if you feel like you want to or you need to with your subject. Sometimes you're in a hurry or you don't have a lot of time, it might be different circumstances, but I always do a slight edge fix around the shoes. Then I move on to the shadows. So I do a base shadow layer by sampling one of the darkest areas in the actual ground. If you can sample an area close to the subject, like here, this rock, for example, or the reason I didn't pick this grass is because it's obviously going to have some green in it. It's fine, you can do it, you can get away with it. It's not gonna, you can adjust it later, whatever. It technically is a shadow, but I wanted a shadow that was more like in relation to the road colors and wasn't going to interfere with the subject's, obviously the subject's shoes are not green like grass. I wanted to, you know, I just selected a area that didn't have green color in it, basically. So like this rock here or this rock here, they're very dark areas. So then we use that color selection to paint some base shadows underneath the feet. And then we just layer it up. So we get a base in, we're happy with it. We do another layer where we're focused on additional shadows from other areas, or just adding more and refining the shadows. And then we do another layer where we're kind of sitting close to the edges. We're focused on the darkest areas of the edges of the feet. And once you're kind of happy with that, you might want to add more shadows. But I would be happy with that at this stage. That's enough for feet blending in this instance. I think that looks quite good. And then we move on to just fixing up the light on the shoes. So I start with some highlights. I just add some, based on the sky's quite bright and the light reflection on the railings here is slightly bright. So we want to emulate that on the subject, even though there could be some shadow from her sitting on the shoes from the top of her body, but we just want to add some detail. So principle wise, we add some highlights, then some shadows to add some more dimension to the shoes, and also thinking about where the shoe is meeting the road, there's shadow, and you want to make sure that that shadow reflection from under the shoe is consistent with how it's going to reflect up onto the shoe here and around here. And then we add some further like color adjustments, like the reflection from the actual ground onto the shoe. And in this instance, we just used a color blending mode adjustment and painted some of that road color onto the shoes. And at this point I would be happy. I think that's quite good. So I hope that helped you guys, and I hope that the tutorial's a little bit long. I hope that gave you some insight into just blending in general and gave you some ideas. So thanks for following me. If you've got any questions, just let me know in the comments. Anything you're not sure about, just let me know. Anything you're struggling with, just let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.